Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 41st, yeah, that's how you say it. I don't know why that I messed it up in the beginning, but sorry. 41st
Right.
episode of Kouryer Podcast. Today, I'm joined with Cameron Hurd. He's a concept artist focusing on character design from Exeter, United Kingdom. With that
Nice.
out of the way, could you please give us a little introduction on how we got into visual arts and design?
Oh, well, I've been drawing basically my whole life. I sort of every time I got bored as a kid, it would be something I'd just draw. I always enjoyed going to art class at school, and sort of as I was getting older and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, everything just sort of came back to ending up just wanting to create and wanting to draw. So I think going from like a kid with crayons to where I am now was just sort of a natural progression. I think it was always where I was going to end up, even though at certain points in my life I thought about taking a different path, but I've got no issues with where I am right now. But yeah, it's just, yeah.
All right. All right. Were you originally studying art and design, or you were pursuing another career path? I assume, like by now, I don't know. I'm just asking. You probably went to college or didn't. Just basically give us a little
Uh,
background on.
yeah. Well, in the UK we do GCSEs, A levels, and then obviously you can go to university and stuff. So I took art throughout all of school, all the way up to my A levels, but it wasn't really until I was about 18 that I decided that I think art is what I wanted to go to. There were a lot of options. I could have been. Um, I was originally planning to do a biology course at university until I got my A level results, and it was pretty bad. Whereas my A level art results were pretty good, and I enjoyed art, so I thought, oh, why not do that? So instead of heading straight to university, I took a gap year to do some traveling and to do a college course to basically help my portfolio to get into university. During that time, I traveled to places like South America, Australia, and Japan, which was fantastic, even though it probably broke my bank account. And then after that, I applied for animation and illustration at university and got into my first choice, thank God. Um, and I studied at um, Worcester University for 3 years, and had a I had a I oh goodness, I studied abroad for a year in Melbourne, Australia as well. So I've been I studied art, so to say, for about 6 years, and then I graduated in 2019. So I've been freelancing for about 2 years now.
All right, awesome. And right now, speaking of freelancing, what is your main branch of design that you're focusing on? And tell us about your experience from the start of it until now.
Well, I at the moment I run an Etsy store, so most of my freelancing stuff, so to say, is more the line of what I want to create, because it's less it's less working for a client, more working um for my own, like my own business. And I sort of I fell into this sort of what I'm doing now sort of by accident, because when I got into my third year of university, I was building a portfolio to send to various design, animation, and various like games companies in the hope of getting a job post when I'd finished university. And during this time, I'd opened up an Etsy store where I offered commissions and prints of my artwork that I did in my spare time. And it was going okay. I'd probably get maybe a sale every few weeks. So it was enough to keep me interested. And then in about March 2019, I got an email from a organization that hosted a convention in London called Hyper Japan, asking me if I wanted to get a artist table at the convention. And I'd never really thought about doing something like convention and booth selling until I got that email, and I was like, "Oh my god, that sounds like so much fun!" So I immediately replied and immediately booked a table at this convention. And then the convention was about 3 months away from when this email came out. So I sat around for about 2 months, finishing my dissertation, finishing university, not really thinking about um, the convention. And then once it got to about 4 weeks away, I suddenly realized I had this table at a convention, but I had absolutely zero things to sell. So I had about 4 weeks of designing, printing, and basically manufacturing things to sell, whether it be my prints, stickers, badges. So I had about 4 weeks prep time when I really should have had 12 to get all of this prep finished for this convention. But I managed to get it done in the skin of my teeth. I think the final shipment of sort of goods I planned to sell arrived the day before I left for London. So I cut it very close, but I made it. And once I was at the convention, it was one of the best times of like my art life. I'd met so many amazing artists. I made more money in a weekend than I had in the previous 20 years of my life, I think, at that point. And I knew that perhaps that was something I wanted to look into. And after that, I really devoted my some more time into developing my Etsy store and booking other conventions. So I did two more conventions after um, the Hyper Japan Festival up until February 2020. And then obviously the world, as we know it, changed very rapidly, and things like conventions haven't happened in over a year. So I solely had to focus on
Yep.
my Etsy art account, and whether it be the previous 6 to 9 months of working on developing um, like a following and developing my shop, but come March of last year, my Etsy store just exploded in popularity, and I went from selling maybe one or two things a week to selling multiple items a day, and all of a sudden this little, like, it was almost like a hobby at that point, very much became a sustainable source of income that I could use to support myself and support future ambitions that I had. So I never intended to be where I am today, but I'm very glad that it all sort of happened just like this.
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, I also visited your Etsy shop, for just research purposes, and
Mhm.
you've tapped into like a really niche, really passionate fandom and audience. Like, I mean, like it's kind of obvious with just 10 seconds of looking at your profile, like Instagram, everyone would know like something pops up a lot. Then it's Attack on Titan, and let's real, it's a really good show. It's a real
Yes.
good. It has a lot of passionate fans, and yeah, I mean, it just worked, and the designs, looked good. And people always trying to find like ways to get accessories with different things they like. Customize their stuff. Pins,
Yeah.
key switches, anything. Anything. When a fandom is passionate, they will try to have their whole life like have
Yeah.
like everything in that same theme, and in that sense, yeah, I mean that became really successful.
Yeah. It.
And by the way,
Oh,
just
sorry.
wondering. Oh, sorry. No, no, go on.
No,
Sorry,
you
sorry.
go. It's all right.
All right. What I was gonna say is, I was wondering if you have any of the products you sold in a convention nearby you right now. You can show us.
I do. If you can just bear with me 2 seconds.
No problem.
I've just got a few. I've got a. They don't have. I have my a few of my badges up, including some large ones and some much
Oh,
smaller ones. These are all from my, as we mentioned previously, my Attack on Titan series.
Attack
But
on
I also
Titan.
it's not the only thing I do, even if it is a large proportion at the moment. But I do have other designs, and they're different, styles. So this one's got
Mm-hmm.
glitter. I currently have on design and on order sort of a collar neck chain design, and I also have some original designs that aren't based on any pre-existing um, like franchise or character on the way soon, which is where I sort of
Mm-hmm.
want to take the store next. I want to diversify into things that aren't just essentially profiting off other people's products and franchises, as that makes it
No, yeah.
sound like I'm sort of skiving off other
No,
people. But
no, no.
hopefully you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but I completely understand. But I mean, I don't think it's like, I understand you want to do original work at some point as well, but I mean,
Yeah,
what you did is, it's not like wrong. You just took something and you did your original spin on it, in a sense. So it's
yeah,
not completely, so
no.
I mean, it's all good. It's all good. And all right, next question: how does your design process usually go anytime you want to start working on a project?
Phew, my process honestly depends on how I'm feeling on that day. I have a very bad habit of, if I start something that day, I will just keep going until it's finished. I find it very difficult to do projects in like short chunks over time. Like, if I get a good idea for a painting or a good idea for like a design, I will slave over that for 14, 15, 16 hours at a time, which isn't very healthy at all. And, you know, but it means that that idea comes together quite quickly. So, other people who they might do it in like 2 to 3 hour chunks over a space of a week. Like, I will bang out a design in about a day for the and that's I know when I'm doing it that that's perhaps not the best way of designing things, but um, I'm a quite impatient person, which is again not great for someone whose like job or livelihood depends on being like very patient and like looking at all the details and making sure everything's perfect. So I've got a very flawed way of looking at the design. Basically, I'll just be like scrolling through images, or I'll be reading something or watching something, and something will just, like, an idea will click in my head, and that idea won't go away until I've at least like sketched it, and then very quickly I'll get an idea if this is actually a good idea, or if it was one of those ideas that you think is good, and then you try to convert it into reality, and you're like, oh, it's not that great. But if the design is good, then basically I'll just keep going at it on that same day, or the very early in the next day, and just bang out the idea in the space of 24 hours. So it's an interesting workflow, but most of my projects
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
they're
and
not
all
like
right.
huge projects. I'm not working on like games like other people, or
Mm-hmm.
music videos, which you physically wouldn't be able to do in the time frame that most of my work is done in.
And actually, I like, throughout all my interviews I did on this podcast, I realized like a major thing, and it's that, like, there's two types of people. There marathon runners and there's sprinters. I personally
Yeah,
myself, I'm a sprinter, and you're as well, I think, when it comes to your
yeah.
your workflow.
I would adore to be a
And yeah,
marathon runner, but I just know it's just not something I will do, because if I leave a project, I find it very hard to return to it, and it will be months at a time before I go, "Hey, I should finish XYZ." So I've tried and I've failed many times to be a marathon runner.
yeah, I mean, that's totally relatable for me. And just one question: on your Instagram bio, it says that moving to Japan in April. Are you going to move into Japan? Hope
Yes. So
in the future.
uh, I've been meaning to move to Japan for about a year now. The original plan was to leave in April 2020, but obviously the world has had other
Good luck with
plans.
that.
It's living in a foreign country has always sort of been like a bucket list dream for me, and um, I was very lucky to be able to live and study abroad in Melbourne, Australia in 2018, which was um, one of the most enjoyable experiences in my life. And if I was ever given a chance to move back to Melbourne, I would do it in a heartbeat. Um, but I visited Japan in 2016, and if you've seen my work, you know that Japanese animation and even some traditional Japanese, like Shogun era art, influences certain aspects of my creative process. So I thought that moving perhaps to Japan, be it for a year or a few more, would really, benefit me not only as a person but in sort of a creative aspect as well. So I applied to be an English teacher over there, as many people who move to Japan do, with the JET program, and I was lucky enough to be shortlisted for a April 2020 departure, which obviously never happened, which was then rescheduled for September, and then November, February, and it was meant to be April, but we're now looking closer to the end of May. So it will happen. Um, any other year, you'd be talking to me currently in Japan, but it's not just any year, 2020, 2021. So I'm still stuck in my hometown. Not that there's anything wrong with my hometown, but it's just how the world is at the moment. But yeah, so still
Yeah.
here.
All right. All right. Next question. Who are your favorite artists and designers that have inspired you the most?
Ooh, um, many of my favorite artists aren't like massively well known. Most of the people who've like influenced me are sort of independent artists themselves. Like they're one of my but there is one person who has probably helped my art more than anything, and if it wasn't for this person, I probably wouldn't be in the position I am today, and that is Mark Criley, who does YouTube videos
Oh,
on how to
yeah.
draw. You might have seen them, you might not have. He's been going for maybe 11
Yeah, I
years,
know
and
him.
he's done books like Mastering Manga and the Realism Challenge, and it was about 2013 during my GCSEs that I decided that like I wanted to learn how to draw because no one had ever like taught me how to draw. Like the
Hmm.
UK um like art process in like secondary schools is more about like researching artists and figuring out like why artists work in certain ways rather than sort of teaching you actually like the foundations and fundamentals of art. So during it wasn't until my first year of university that we took any form of like theory or any form of life drawing. It was so back in 2013, which was 3 or 4 years before I took any of those classes, I decided I wanted to draw, and I googled it on googled how to draw basically on YouTube, and Mark Criley's videos came up, and they taught me very much. They taught me more than I thought I wanted to know because I thought I just wanted to know like step one, draw this line here, step two, draw an eye. But during his videos, he broke down like the creative process, and it was a real eye opener because not only did I know like how to draw something, I knew like why certain things were drawn that way, and sort of why certain artists functioned in the way they did much better than any teacher at school taught me. Not that that's to discredit any art teachers in the UK. It was just perhaps I didn't see eye to eye, particularly with my current teacher at the time. Um, and since then, I've gone on to be inspired by like artists such as I've never known how to pronounce his name, but like Guez. He's an artist based in Hong Kong with I think almost 1 million Instagram followers at this point. He recently released an art book in the last year, which turned up for me in the last few weeks, which is very nice. And another one, another artist who has influenced me a lot is another small, another independent artist called CT Chrysler. His like character design and um, like character reference sheets have been a massive influence in me designing my own characters and sort of figuring out like the semiotics of character design, like why characters are wearing things as opposed to just what looks cool. So Mark Riley, Goez, and C.T. Chrysler are probably my three biggest influences. None of which are like they're not world renowned artists, but you know, if it wasn't for their influence, I probably wouldn't be doing the work I do today. Mm.
Yeah, actually, Mark Riley is pretty famous. I mean, but I guess I know what I get. I mean, I get what you're saying about like not being world
Yeah,
famous, like rest of the other
yeah.
artists.
It's like none of them are like a
But yeah,
Van
he's
Gogh
pretty.
or a Monet, all of which I like a lot,
Hmm.
but they're not like massive influences, or they're not like you could go up to any person in the street and they'd know who like Da Vinci or Monet or Van Gogh is. You could talk to 99% of people and they would know who they are. Whereas I think you'd have to be sort of in the art
Hmm.
community to know sort of my influences, so to say.
All right, next question. What is the main subject of your artworks and what made them interesting to you?
The main focus of my art is probably characters and character design. I've always struggled with sort of non-character art. Um, and also I like creating stories in my head, and then hopefully transferring them onto the piece of paper. So I find doing character art of existing characters very rewarding in that sense, and designing my own characters has helped sort of unlock a whole different side to like composition and character art in my head, because you instead of having to draw things based on something you've already seen and digest, you've sort of got to create this world inside your head and then put it onto like the canvas, so to say, um, in a way that hopefully someone else can look at it and have a similar reaction or emotion to. So I hope I'm answering the question vaguely correctly.
Hey, you are.
Yeah.
No, no, that's good. And
Mm.
all right, next question. What technologies and softwares do you mostly use for your works?
Um, I used to use the program Clip Paint Studio, Clip Studio CSP, Clip Studio Paint on Windows using a Wacom Cintiq 13, which I bought on my 18th birthday after saving up for a long while, and that served me fantastically for about 4 to 4.5 years, when in just after Hyper Japan, the money I'd made at the convention, I invested in a iPad Pro, and I don't think since like about August 2019 I've really used my Cintiq since then, because I'm pretty much exclusively using my iPad Pro, and the software on it I use is Procreate. I'm not really much of a traditional artist, mostly because I'm horrifically messy. And I have a horrible thing of working left to right, and being a being a left-handed person, that just means I smudge everything on the paper. So being able to work digitally reduces any mess I would sort of otherwise make. And also, I growing up, my parents were both keen photographers, so I learned how to sort of edit and like alter photos through like Photoshop and online. So being able to apply like my knowledge of photography and cinematography to my art wouldn't it would be a lot harder on traditional than it would be on digital.
Interesting. And any advice and tips for a good portfolio and resume for artists?
Um, I've been very lucky that I don't have never really had to submit many portfolios other than the ones I had to submit to university. I think the I don't have much advice to give on this subject, but the few pieces of advice that were given to me that I thought were helpful were to have you it sounds weird, but you need to have like a vast like array of things you've done, but also like a narrow niche. You need to know what you want to do and what you're applying for. So if you're applying for illustration at university, so to say, you need to be able to show them that you can illustrate, but you also need to show them that you are, and you need to show them what you want to um, illustrate, but you also need to show them that you know not just you're not a one trick pony. You know more than one thing. You need to show them that you can um, adapt and you have a good understanding of other types of art. So because then that really, I think, solidifies that you know what you want to do because you've tried other things first. When it comes to applying for jobs, sadly, that's not really something I've had much experience in currently, but that could change in the future.
All right. And what are you working on right now that you can tell us about? I mean, of course, if it's something that there's an NDA involved, we can skip past this question. But if that's not the case,
Um,
tell us what you're
I'm
doing.
I'm working on nothing that's got an NDA at the moment. I'm currently just I've for the past year during the pandemic, to sort of supplement my Etsy funds, I was working at a sort of a warehouse as a key worker. And I recently left that about 3 weeks ago to begin working on my own projects again. So currently, I'm just working on more designs and more drops for my online store. So I'm currently designing new pin designs, and I'm coming up with different ideas for future artworks and prints that I'd hope to sell at conventions. And on the back burner, I've for about 2 years now, I've had a Google Drive document where I've been slowly writing a story based on original characters, and it's nowhere near the point of sharing yet. But it's going to get there one day. I just sort of need to take a leap of faith at some point and publish some chapters that I've written of these characters, of which I've drawn these characters hundreds of times, but I've never really shown anyone their like why I draw them the way I do, and why these characters exist, and what you know I haven't shown anyone like their backstories and so to say. So I'm not currently working on like anything for anyone else. Everything's sort of just for my own personal projects, because I'm very fortunate in the position I am, where I'm able to just sort of work for myself and draw what I want to draw. And I'm very lucky to have the following that I do, which allows me to, you know, be able to live independently of working for someone else currently.
Awesome. And just wondering, like, I think you mentioned it a couple of times in the in our previous questions, but when was the key moment when, like, what was a pivotal moment for you, like in your career, that it made you gain a lot of traction and get a large number of following, so you can basically become independent? Like, what really helped with that?
Um, like my following, so to say, through like my social medias was it was sort of like a slow grind to begin with. I opened up most of my social medias in like September 2018, but I didn't really begin posting on them till about like February or March 2019, mostly because I was jealous of my much younger brother who had a much larger following than me for his like music page, and I thought, well, if he can do it, why can't I? So I began posting more and more of my artwork onto like Facebook and Instagram, and it I think it took me about 2 months of like posting and interacting every day on these things to reach about like 1,000 combined followers, which at that time was a huge deal. And it slowly picked up pace um, until about like March 2020, when my social medias slowed down a lot, but my like actual store began to explode. It coincided with the beginning of the UK lockdown, that all of a sudden my Etsy store began to shoot up in popularity. I'm never quite sure of why. Why I got was it luck? Was it like, because I think that was about the time I began creating and manufacturing pins for my store. So it could have. I think it was a combination of sheer luck, about 18 months of building an audience behind my work, and building, not just posting work, but interacting with the people who follow me to let them know that I'm a real person who is just, he wants to draw for a living if he can, and if they can help me in any way, I wanted to know that I really appreciated it. And so my social media sort of slowed down during the pandemic, but my actual, like, my ability to live as an artist grew massively, as I was going from
Hmm.
maybe making £100 a month to making, you know 10 times that much in the space of 2 months, for reasons that I'm not quite sure of. And then come the end of last year, 2020, my social medias began to pick up. I started posting more, and I did a fan art of one of the more recent chapters in Attack on Titan, which is possibly my most viral and also my most stolen piece of art, because I've seen it so many times on um, like other people's Etsy's, and I'm like, I don't think that's yours, but so not only so that picture got me a huge amount of traction, and that sort of doubled my following in the space of 6 to 8 weeks. I went from about 5,000 to about 10,000 followers in that time. So I don't think there was like one breakthrough moment, and I think a lot of the moments I have had have just come through luck or coincidence. But I do think it all stems back to just that initial that initial time I took to you know, make sure that I was posting regularly, and making sure that people knew that, I wasn't just a random person, but I was, someone who's passionate about what they do. Hopefully, I think. I like to think people think that of me, but you never really know. But yeah, it was just
Yeah.
base sort of that.
All right. Two things here.
Yeah.
First, you said, I don't know why it blew up in March, and I mean it's super obvious. Well, I mean, when the lockdowns happened, everyone was inside, and it wasn't just your its shop that skyrocketed. The
Yeah.
whole online shopping sector skyrocketed,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
here's the thing: everyone when they're in quarantine, especially in the beginning when they know how to deal with it exactly. There were a lot of depression and all that. So what
Yeah.
happens? People try to get quick, just doses of dopamine in them, whether by ordering food online, I don't know,
Mhm.
or buying things they like online. You know,
It's yeah,
so a lot of
it's
people
true.
were.
I think maybe I phrased that wrong. I'm more just the shocked that I saw an explosion happen, and I was obviously very happy with that. And like it constantly in the back of my head, I was wondering, well, this is going to die down once things begin to go back to normal. And in the UK, we got very close to some semblance of normality in sort of July and August, and to other places in the world, it got a bit better during the summer. But like the traction, it did nothing slowed down like I ever thought it would. I thought, oh, this is great for the next few months, but when everyone begin to go back to their, they return to the lives they previously had, things will sort of go back to the way they were, and it never did, and it continues to shock me to this day. I don't know. Um, I obviously have to tell myself I've worked incredibly hard over the last few years to get the position I am, but sometimes I still wonder if it's something that I truly deserve, or if I've truly earned it yet. And the fact it's happening probably means I do, but it's something that my brain still struggles to process. It's like, well, why me? Why not one of my other friends who perhaps hasn't had such uh, good fortunes over the past year? I
Well, I mean,
suppose
I
it's
I kind of understand why you would say that.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, go on.
Oh, I thought you were saying something. I mean,
Yeah,
sorry. Um, yeah, I mean, I kind of understand why you would say that, but like after like even getting some sort of like success, you would start getting imposter syndrome. You would doubt yourself. You know, you're like, why am I getting this kind of traction? But
yeah,
it's all in terms of, but it's all about perspective.
yeah,
Like that number for you at that time seemed so high for you that made you have imposter syndrome.
yeah,
But if so, it shouldn't bother you that much, because it's enjoy it,
yeah.
man. I'm just saying. I'm just gonna say
Oh,
that.
yeah. Imposter syndrome is something I've sort of dealt with my entire life. Well, and it's been more prominent sort of in the years of posting online, because I
Hmm.
don't think I mentioned earlier when I was talking about how I got to where I am today, but back in 2011, 2012, I opened a DeviantArt account where um, I drew Pokemon for a time, because at that time I think Pokemon X and Y was coming out, so I really got into Pokemon as a kid. I'd been part of my life, or it still is. So I started drawing Pokemon in the style of Ken Sugimori, who is the lead character artist of Pokemon. He draws like all the box covers, and he draws all the official art for Pokemon. So I learned to draw in what was then dubbed as Sugimori style, which is basically I was basically just emulating someone else's style, and I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I got really good at imitating someone else's style in that time. And then like one day out of the blue, a much larger DeviantArt account, they found my art, and they decided that I was basically stealing. Like none of my um drawings were ever like copies of the original art. They were always my own
Hmm.
designs, or you know they'd maybe have like some similarities to other arts, because in art you reference things from real life, and you reference from artists you
Yep.
like. And I was maybe 15 or 16 at the time, and then to suddenly someone who had 4 or 5 times the amount of followers I did suddenly post publicly that I was stealing designs from Pokemon. And then I had you know a couple hundred people come to my channel, accusing me of being like a fraud or an imposter, which eventually led to me deleting that account and maybe not even touching a pencil for about a year. And ever since then, I restarted a Deviant account a few years later, and then eventually transferred over to like Instagram and ArtStation. So every time I post something,
Hmm.
I fear that someone is just going to go, no, you this is you're an imposter. I don't know how. I don't know how they'd come up with that, but that's always been on the back of my mind. And it's an absurd claim, um but that's how it is, sadly. It just, I've got to get it out of my brain, and maybe it will, maybe it won't, but it's just sort of something I've got to think about.
I mean, for like a 15, 16-year-old to go through that, I mean, that of course that would have been really like, impactful in like a bad way, I guess, in like a
Yeah,
negative way. I mean, rightfully so. Um, like I kind of get that you still carry that, feeling and weight of it, but
yeah,
in the end of the day, if you're not stealing, I mean, which you don't obviously, and you're just doing what you love, I mean, why should you even care for a second what anyone else would say? Just you do you, and people who like your work will find you, and which is obviously happened at this point. I mean, so I mean, when your Etsy shop is that successful for now, and you get it like an organic, like it, good some amount of followers, organically. I
yeah,
mean, it should show that you might be doing, I don't know, something right. So I mean, the
yeah.
imposter syndrome shouldn't be that
Mm.
present at the
Yeah, I
moment. So
suppose
yeah, and the other thing I wanted to, all right,
that's all right. I was just going to say, like,
oh,
I
sorry, you were
suppose one of
going
the,
to say
the
something.
benefits of that having happened to me was, it encouraged me in a quite mean way to, you know, stop imitating other people and sort of develop my own style. And but that being said, I don't think I could have developed my own style if I hadn't first essentially copied other people's styles. Because I think most artists, they get their inspiration, they get them from like three or four different sources, and then it sort of just their own style mashes together. So you can see inspiration. The people like Mark Cryley, Goez, C.T. Chrysler, I think you can see their influences in my work. Like you can go, oh yeah, I can see like influences of certain artists in other people's work, but I don't think that's like copying. That's just being influenced. So I, when people, if someone posts like they've basically got my art up and they've drawn it, but they've just drawn it, or like not traced, but they've basically drawn the exact same thing. Um, like I know certain people take issue with that, but I've got no problem with people if they want to, ever use my art to sort of practice, because I think that's a great way of learning the fundamentals of art. And if you don't learn these things somewhere, then it's going to be a massive struggle. And if people are victimized for, then that's I think an issue. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing I wanted to mention, like I said, two things like earlier. The second thing is you said that there was a certain post that blew up your page a bit of Attack on Titan. Which post is that exactly?
The post that I'm referring to is I think on my Etsy it's called like Chapter 130, Attack on Titan. Um, it's of like the profile of a Titan's face and one of the main characters in front of it on a much smaller scale, and it was inspired by the Attack on Titan anthology cover, which has the Colossal Titan and Eren. And I thought it would be interesting to do sort of a comparison to see how the series started and how it's about to end. Because I think Attack on Titan's final chapter is coming out in about 4 weeks' time. So I thought it would be interesting to
I think
see
there's
like
two, three
the
chapters remaining.
juxtaposition.
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
that, I think my previous, my most engaged post up until that point had about 20,000 views, and this one is, bordering on like 500,000 at this point, and that's not even including
Oh.
reposts. So it blew up beyond any proportion. Um, it is a spoiler for people who are following Attack on Titan and haven't caught up. So if you want to go look at my, um, if you want to have a look at it, just be warned.
All right. Is it on your Instagram?
Yeah, so I think it's on all my profiles. It's on my Etsy, Facebook, Twitter, you name it. And some people have probably already, seen it through like repost accounts and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
because it gets
All
around a
right.
lot,
Interesting.
which I suppose is a benefit and a hindrance.
All right. True. All right. Next question. What area beside the area you're working on right now, which is of course character design and concept art, are you interested to explore and learn in the future?
One thing I recently invested in that is sort of a departure from what I currently do is I bought myself a video a video camera and a drone, because I've one thing I've always been interested in is cinematography, um, and I've always been interested in wanting to create like films, but I've never really had the time or resources to do it. Um, and now I finally got some free time. I've decided that I wanted to create some films, and I've just started by doing some sort of drone photography in the local area. And I'm very fortunate to live by the coast, so I'm able to get some lovely shots of the seaside using this new equipment, and it's quite the departure from illustration, but I think the two can work hand in hand, because obviously I studied animation um, at university, and that's sort of the bridging gap between illustration and filmmaking. So I think it's just something I've always wanted to do, and I have no idea if it will work out or not. But you never know these things until you at least give them a try.
All right. All right. Interesting. And well, with everything that's been said and done in this episode, to conclude all we discussed, give us a roadmap for someone who is zero in visual arts and design and wants to get to the place you are in terms of skill set, like every step. Give us a roadmap where to start, books,
Um,
courses, anything that could come to your
yeah.
mind. What are
Um,
those tips?
I think my biggest tip is obviously just you have to draw as much as possible, but I think it helps to know what to draw. And if you want to do sort of character design and character art, you have to know like the foundations of art. So if you want to draw human characters, as boring as it sounds, you have to go away and study the human anatomy. You have to know why things do certain things. Um, and if you want to draw stylized drawings, if you want to draw in an anime style, or if you want to draw in like a Rick and Morty style, you still have to know the very foundations of like theory. You have to know anatomy. So I cannot like recommend doing um I can't, sorry, that was the wrong word. I can't recommend enough doing things like life drawing classes, studying from photographs and studying from real life. You might not be able to draw outside all the time, but you can look at photos online and figure out, why things look certain ways. And you might not be able to afford to go to life drawing classes, but again, you can look at photos online. You can get family members to pose for you, and just practice drawing and pay real attention to like the way things like pay real attention to how things move and how things pose. Pay attention to like how much weight is on a leg, and etc. There's a lot of things to digest, and it probably is incredibly boring for most people to learn like biology. But I cannot stress how much that will help you in the long run, because I know there are a lot of people who ask like like how do you draw in like an anime style or a Rick and Morty style, when like teachers at school, they don't like you doing that. And the reason they don't like you doing that is because if that's the only style you know, then you won't be able to, it will be a big struggle for you to like develop your own style and develop into new things. You have to know the you have to know the rules of art in order to break them. So if you want to create stylized characters, you have to know how the body looks in real life, so you can stylize it and then also make it look realistic. So you just have to practice as much as you can, draw as much as you can, and you have to study the boring things as much as it might pain you. Because if you can get past that point where you know how like the body works, you know color theory, and you know composition, then all of a sudden your drawings will go from, you might be able to, copy like a pose, to being able to create your own poses, to being able to create your own color schemes. Um, so you have to practice as much as possible. You have to, you know, don't. I think it's important to look at other artists and see what you like about their work. So other people, you might like the way they stylize faces. Other people, you might like the way they use expressive brush strokes to create like highlights in their images. And do studies of these people's artworks and figure out how they do these things. Like, how do they design those faces? How do they like paint in that expressive style? So you have to, basically copy from the people you enjoy in order to learn from them initially, and then you can put those aspects of other people's work that you like into your own style. And over time your own style will emerge, but don't force it. Don't go, I have to create a new style, because it will just cause you misery. Just take bits and pieces. Like, don't like copy. Like, um don't do what I did initially, with I just basically imitated someone else's style. But like, take bits and pieces, like you might like how someone colors, and you add it to your own style, and eventually over time, like your own character design style and your things will develop over time. You just can't. That's something you can't force, I think. And if you want to, build a following in order to potentially make a living from all of this, once you've got to that point, you have to, let everyone. You have to post regularly. You have to let everyone know that you are a real person, and someone who's not just doing this for the sake of making a living. You have to do, like, you have to be doing this because you love to do this. Because if you are doing something for the sake of, you know being famous, or making money on things, it's a very hollow existence. So if that's the sole reason you're doing something, I think you need to take a serious look, because you have to be okay with potentially doing what you're doing now for the rest of your life. Obviously, it's never too late to change career path if you decide something isn't working out for you. I know that people who've gotten to 50 years old and then decided to retrain. So it's never too late, but just always try to make sure that what you're doing, you are doing because you love, and not for, you know, reasons that are ultimately empty in the long run. So I guess for the too long didn't read answer, it would be study the fundamentals, like look at other people's art, figure out what you like, and incorporate it into your own style. Let people know that you are like a human who is doing this because they love to do it and not for any other reason. And also just do it because you have fun. There's no, it's not a competition, there's no race. Just do it because you enjoy doing it, and that should be all the reason you need. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say sort of on something like that.
All right, awesome. And where can people contact you if they had a question?
If people want to get in contact with me, I generally am pretty good at replying to things on my Instagram, which is at cami_creations. I also have a Facebook page and a Twitter, all by the same name. My Etsy store is again by the same name, and I also have a email which I'm pretty good at least seeing people's emails, which is camihurd@gmail.com.
Awesome. And well, that's about it. Thank you for coming by, and
No
and
worries. Thank you very
thanks to
much for
everyone who's tuned in
inviting me.
and
Had a
listened.
had a good talk with you.
And all right, my pleasure. My pleasure. And take care, everyone. Stay safe. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.